Good morning, Excellency Minister. Very nice to see you.
Good morning, Aliya Aliyasir. Thank you. For me too. Very nice morning with all of you. Hello.
So should we be starting now, or are we waiting for others to join?
No, I think we can start.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, partners, colleagues, and friends, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Those of you that don't already know, that is available, and you just need to click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. It's wonderful to have you all here with us today to participate in this important side event convened by the government of Turkey as part of the 66th session of the Committee on the Status of Women. Today, we are speaking on the topic of empowering women through cooperatives. In the words of Her Excellency Derya Yanık, on behalf of the MIKTA group of countries at the opening of this year's CSW session, we know that although acutely felt by every one of us around the world, climate change and disasters have disproportionate impact on women and girls as they face gender-based discrimination, and they represent the majority of the world's poor and are more dependent on threatened natural resources. Women's are formed and informed by women, the benefit of communities, and they promote the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women. And that's why they are critical entry points to increase the resilience to climate change and disasters. And that's why they can be leveraged to promote women's full and equal representation and leadership in climate, environmental, and disaster risk actions. We have a very rich program today, but before we dive into today's discussions, I'm going to ask all of you to kindly put on your cameras so we can quickly do a group photo before we go into the discussions and run out of time for this. So if I can kindly ask you all, and I will ask the technical colleagues to just let us know when the photo has been taken and this is finished. So just to repeat. Finished?
Okay.
Thank you very much. So, we have, as I said, many great speakers, and let's dive in. And let me begin by introducing the key host of today's discussion, Her Excellency Derya Yanık, Minister of Family and Social Services of the Republic of Turkey. Her Excellency was appointed to this post last year and brings to this critical role a wealth of experience in human rights law, with a focus on children and women's rights. She's been actively involved in society work for many years and has taken on senior managerial positions in many associations and foundations, including the Women and Democracy Association, also known as KADEM. She is a member of the Central Decision Executive Board of the AK Party and is engaged in key dialogues at the national level, as well as in regional and international arenas. Nancy, the floor is yours for opening this meeting.
Thank you so much. Honorable ministers, distinguished representatives of international and national organizations, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this side event organized by Turkey on the occasion of the 66th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. First of all, allow me to extend my gratitude to Honorable Minister for Equal Opportunities and Family of Italy, Ms. Elena Bonetti, welcome. Honorable Deputy Minister for Entrepreneurship of Indonesia, Ms. Siti Aziza. as she is participating with a video message. Thank you for this message. Esteemed moderator of this event, Ms. Aliya Al-Yasir, UN Women Regional Director for Europe and Central Asia. Thank you so much for the moderating. Esteemed Secretary General of European Confederation of Industrial and Service Cooperatives, Mrs. Diana Dovgan. Thank you so much. Distinguished Chairwoman of the Top Women Entrepreneurs Council, Ms. Nurten Öztürk. Thank you so much. Distinguished Program Manager at the Enterprises Department of the International Labour Organization, Ms. Simel Eşim. Thank you so much. And distinguished Chief Scientist of FAO, Ms. Ismahane Elofi, for kindly accepting our invitation to this event. It's a great privilege for me to address such a distinguished audience and partners, of course. I'm confident that we will have an enriched and comprehensive exchange of views today with your valuable contributions. Distinguished participants, the Commission on the Status of Women remains fundamental in promoting women's rights and positively influencing global standards on the empowerment of women. As known, this year, the 66th session of the Commission is focusing on the priority theme, achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. And considering today's conditions, I strongly believe that it was the right decision. Hereby, I'd like to state that some prevalent consequences of climate change impacts currently have more explicit signals over the world. Therefore, climate change emerges as a reproduction area of economic and social inequalities in the world, and it is not just a technical issue, it's an extremely social issue. Distinguished guests, I believe that cooperatives contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals by increasing women's access to resources and economic opportunities. Female members undertake a crucial role in increasing production levels. Women are also early adopters of new technologies. Participation of both men and women in the cooperative results in a diversity of perspectives that strengthens the business overall. In this event, we aim at drawing attention to the cooperatives as a powerful tool to amplify women's voices, agency, and leadership as requirement for resilience building sustainable development. More than 1 billion people are part of the 3 million cooperatives in the world. Cooperatives employ 280 million people worldwide. This rate corresponds to approximately 10% of the working population. As to Turkey, approximately 85,000 cooperatives and more than 8 million cooperative partners exist today. This ever-increasing system, creating added value globally, is also used in supporting the economic development of women. Esteemed participants, in Turkey, we have been carrying out various programs to raise awareness within the scope of women's cooperatives. We draw attention to problems, generate solutions, and develop strong collaborations with relevant parties. More preciously, in line with our 11th development plan, we supported cooperatives in the fields of training, entrepreneurship, and consultancy. Moreover, we have signed the cooperation protocol on strengthening women's cooperatives. This protocol was put into force in 2018 in collaboration with the Ministry of Family and Social Service, our ministry, Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, and Ministry of Trade. Additionally, we formed women's cooperatives working groups in 81 provinces and prepared annual activity plans. We also organized several workshops and seminars and shared knowledge and experience with cooperatives visits. At the same time, We supported women's cooperatives in sales and allocated sales places for them. Proudly, until now, a total of 40,000 people were reached through 825 workshops, training, and information meetings held in 81 provinces. A total 378 visits were carried out and 525 new cooperatives were established. We held 10 regional meetings and reached 3,500 people in order to support women's cooperatives as a rising value of Turkey, improve communication among women's cooperatives, raise awareness of local governments, and disseminate good practices. Today, there are 702 women's cooperatives in Turkey, and these cooperatives have 12,000 women members. Beyond action plans and protocols, cooperatives have the opportunity to provide a structural change and development with the renewed law. Gladly, a new law entered into force in 2021. In accordance with the law, registration and announcement fees paid at the establishment and operation stage and registration fees paid to the Chamber of Commerce were abolished by providing particular facilities to women's cooperatives. Esteemed guests, I'm pleased to inform you that we have started a new project, namely the project entitled Women's Empowerment Through Cooperatives. We'll provide solutions to the problems experienced by women's cooperatives and provide forward-looking projections. This project consists of 5 main pillars. First of all, we are planning training on issues such as legal regulations, institutional support mechanism, good practices, and women's empowerment for 5,000 women and 3,000 men who have the potential to establish cooperatives or become partners. We will periodically provide product development support in areas including cooperative law, responsibilities and obligations, social security, accounting, branding, e-commerce, in consideration of the needs of women who are cooperative partners. In line with our institutional capacity building target, we will provide trainings on women and cooperatives to people consisting of representatives of relevant public institutions, universities, and NGOs. In the field of scientific and technical studies, we will map the number of women's cooperatives and their working areas in Turkey. Based on this study, we will conduct research on good practices and innovation. With the research, we will examine how efforts are made in the world with the intention to meet needs such as product development, sales and marketing, branding, and establishing cooperation. Thus, we will develop our own women's cooperative ecosystem model. Additionally, as part of the project, we are planning to create a web portal to facilitate the cooperation between existing women's cooperatives. Dear guests, we need to consider several leading issues, such as increasing need for food security, environment pollution, and climate change, along with economic crisis, employment problems, and the COVID-19 pandemic, which has been impacting the world negatively for the last 2 years. I wish to emphasize that women's cooperatives are an innovative and reliable business model based on solidarity, knowledge, and experience sharing. As I conclude, I would like to affirm that as Turkey, we will maintain our efforts to improve the status of women, ensure effective participation of women in all spheres of life, and provide equal access to rights, resources, and opportunities. I'd like to convey my gratitude to the moderator, my counterparts, and all our panelists, as well as all participants, distinguished audience from all over the world, and those who contributed to the organization of this side event. I greet you all with my deepest respect. As the last word, unfortunately, I may have to leave this side event early due to my flight back to Turkey, which seems to be very soon. I'm really very sorry. For this, I ask for your indulgence. Thank you again for all the participants, for all the audience, and for our dear moderator. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, for these important reflections. I think you've left us with very important messages. Climate change is not just a technical issue. We're talking about it as a social issue, and cooperatives as a tool, as a powerful tool to tackle both the technical and the social issues. And I think the scope of work that you have in Turkey and are planning in Turkey is truly impressive. And we know that the scope of this work also extends not only in support of Turkish women's cooperatives, but also very solid work in support of the Syrian and other refugees. Minister, we understand that you have urgent travel and you won't be able to stay with us. Stay with us as long as you can. And I want to just thank you for this event, for your commitment to gender equality and women's empowerment, and for the wonderful partnership and support. And it's my pleasure at this stage to turn to our speakers. It's a pleasure to introduce Her Excellency Elena Bonetti, the Minister of Equal Opportunities in the Family of Italy. Her Excellency has held the position also as Associate Professor of Mathematical Analysis at the University of Milan. And aside from her extensive love of mathematics, Minister Bonetti is committed to the Scout movement and is heavily engaged in the fields of education and youth engagement. Excellency, wonderful to meet you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, distinguished ministers, colleagues, distinguished participants. Let me start by thanking the Minister for Family and Social Services, Delia Janik, for the invitation to participate into this event. It highlights the crucial role of civil society in fostering women's empowerment in our societies. We are now know that to build a better future for the whole society, we need the contribution from women, from all women in every country and in every sector. In particular, we must advance gender equality for all women and girls, both in urban and rural areas. This commitment entails implementing specific policies tailored for specific situations. We cannot apply the model one size fits all any longer. Climate change teaches us that urban women will not face the same struggles and the challenges as rural women. The UN Secretary General, in his report for this CSW, casts a light on the impact of climate change and other interconnected challenges. Clearly, climate change has also an impact on the safeguard of universal human rights, in particular, the rights to life and dignity, to development, to an adequate standard of living, to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health, to water and sanitation, to a healthy environment. It is indisputable that women have suffered disproportionately the consequences of this ongoing crisis. On the other hand, we are also aware that they can give a decisive contribution towards a more resilient and sustainable development. To this end, we must encourage women's leadership. Women must be agents of change in our endeavors to tackle climate change. Rural women, who represent a quarter of the world's population, play a crucial role in preserving and improving their communities and their livelihood systems. They are pivotal to economic and agricultural growth, poverty reduction, and in meeting food needs. A few years ago, in its general recommendation, the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women urged the state parties to CEDAW to single out and address the specific threats posed to rural women by climate change, natural disaster, land and soil degradation, pollution, desertification, industries, loss of biodiversity. This list could be longer. Still, it already reflects the magnitude of the risk women in rural areas are mostly exposed to. States are urged to honor their responsibility by taking actions to ensure that rural women enjoy a safe, clean, and healthy environment. Moreover, more efforts are needed to encourage rural women's full participation in design, planning, and implementation stages of all policies. These achievements are premised on better access for women to political posts and leadership positions. Women must be at the forefront of the decision-making processes in all sectors. Against the alarming backdrop of climate change and environmental degradation, gender equality and women's empowerment can be attained through integrated policies that uphold rights, promote resilience, and encourage the development of sustainable and regenerative economies. Education is pivotal, in particular, to boost women and girls' participation in STEM disciplines. Furthermore, it is imperative that we grant better support to women's cooperatives by strengthening their sustainability, their institutional capacity, and by increasing their visibility, as pursued by the Women Coop initiative. To this point, the Italian government's National Recovery and Resilience Plan has allocated the Next Generation EU funds to finance and support new green policies centered on a gender transformative approach for the future. However, let me say, we cannot unlock the full potential of women in our society without eradicating gender-based violence first. Italy is fully committed in this field and has recently adopted the new National Plan of Action on Violence Against Women for the next years, in line with the provision of the Istanbul Convention. This is one of the key legal instruments aimed to prevent and counter gender-based violence in all its forms. In particular, the new plan envisages targeted measures to guarantee women's economic independence. Let me spotlight two tools in particular, the Income of Freedom and the Microcredit of Freedom schemes, devised to support women who fell victim of violence and help them to start a new life by opening up to them the avenues of entrepreneurial endeavors. We want to build a future where women can actively put their skills at the service of the green revolution and effectively contribute to the fight against environmental disasters. We envision a future where more and more women can hold political and economic leadership roles and guide our country towards increased sustainability, not only environmental, but also economic and social. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Minister. Again, you've given us so many food for thought in terms of this important topic. I think you've talked about the disproportionate impact of climate change on particularly rural women, but also I think you've passed some very strong messages on the potential and the active role of rural women as agents for change, as leaders of the green revolution that we need. And also that we need integrated policies that look across sectors and make sure that we are tackling the issues by enabling structures like women's cooperatives who are promoting economic growth, they're promoting agricultural growth, but they are also a center for social entrepreneurship and social good. Thank you so much for your intervention. We now turn to our next speaker, the Deputy Minister for Entrepreneurship, Ministry of SMEs of Indonesia, Siti Aziza. Deputy Minister Aziza comes with extensive private sector and entrepreneurship experience. She wasn't able to join us today for this event in person, but she's shared a recorded message. So I kindly ask the technical team to start the recording. Playback.
Minister of Family and Social Services, Republic of Turkey, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Greeting from Indonesia. First of all, I would like to congratulate all women a happy International Women's Day on March 8th. Today is a very special day where we can meet virtually to discuss how to narrow down the gender gap by increasing women's participation in the labor force and empowering women through promoting and supporting women's cooperative. The United Nations has launched Sustainable Development Goals as a global agenda for the continuation of the Millennium Development Goals, including life without poverty, without hunger, good health and welfare, quality education, and gender equality. One of Indonesian government strategies is to support the SDG is to empower cooperative and microfinance institutions in rural areas. Currently, Indonesia has more than 64 million MSMEs with 64% women MSMEs that contribute to 60% of national economy. Recognizing women's significant contribution to the economy, women take part as key players in sustaining the position of MSMEs. It is necessary that the role of women entrepreneurs has to be mainstreamed through policies and other support initiatives. According to the Ministry of Cooperative and SMEs data, there are 11,000 units of active women's cooperative with a total capital of 2 trillion rupiah, employing more than 600,000 family members. This data shows that women have extraordinary potential. Therefore, further actions and reforms need to be developed by the government to optimize their full potential. Cooperatives has created some benefit for women in improving the livelihood of their families. Several studies have shown that women's cooperatives help their members to meet their social needs, improve their welfare, and their businesses. Women's cooperatives can also provide support in developing rural economies and family welfare. The Ministry of Cooperative and SME is currently focusing on the transformation of modern cooperative with the target of 500 modern cooperatives in 2024. The areas of transformation are: number one, transformation of saving and loan cooperative to focus on real sector cooperative with economies of scale principle to increase investment. The second one is innovation and technology transformation to increase value added of local resources and product. And the third one, transformation of multi-sector cooperative to streamline production lines and enhance market connectivity. Cooperative has important role in women equality that focusing on access to resources and economic opportunities. Furthermore, also helping women to deal with social culture challenges by creating a conducive environment to take the opportunity and provide economic position equal to men. With the spirit of empowering women and MSMEs, Ministry of Cooperative and SME developed a program to support women entrepreneurs by focusing on human resource development program, including business consultation, mentoring, and business training, market access facility through exhibition, access to digital platform, and e-procurement. And lastly, facility to financial access by providing financial assistance for micro business, such as micro business loan and revolving fund program. Finally, I do hope that all of us can work together to empower women entrepreneurs and modern women's cooperative. And to all women, let's celebrate and take this opportunity to set your goals, act your thought, and start making impacts for all. Thank you.
Well, many thanks to Deputy Minister Aziza for sharing these important insights and achievements in Indonesia. I think she's given us a lot of food for thought. There's clearly a plan of action for investment from the government side in recognition of the very important role that women entrepreneurs, particularly micro and small medium enterprises run by women, but also cooperatives to economic growth of the country and the well-being of communities and family. We now move on to our next speaker, and it is an absolute pleasure for me to introduce her. She's a dear colleague of mine and considered a guru on cooperatives, Simal Eshim. Simal leads the work of the International Labour Organization on cooperatives and also the social and solidarity economy. And previously, she was the senior gender specialist. Before joining ILO, Simal has worked with leading research and development organizations and continues to publish on key topics related to her extensive experience, including a book called Cooperatives and the World of Work. Dear Simal, it's wonderful to see you again, and the floor is yours. Simal, you need to unmute your microphone. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ali. It's great to see you again and join you and the esteemed panelists in this high-level side event. Many thanks for this invitation from Turkey to the International Labour Organization. Teşekkürler. The ILO is the specialized agency of the United Nations that's responsible for the world of work. And it mentions, since it has a mandate for social justice and decent work, and since its inception, the ILO has recognized the relevance of cooperatives to its mandate. It mentions cooperatives in its constitution. It has had a co-op unit since 1920. And this unit takes research, capacity building, policy advocacy, and project activities. The ILO also has an international standard, a recommendation, No. 193, on the promotion of cooperatives. This was adopted 20 years ago in 2002. And since its adoption, support has been provided using this recommendation to more than 115 countries to reform and develop their co-op policies and legislation. The recommendation says that special consideration should be given to increasing women's participation in the cooperative movement at all levels, particularly in management and leadership. In our work at the ILO, we see that women can benefit from cooperatives as workers, as members, as leaders, and users, increasing their access to employment and work, providing skills, training, and on-the-job learning, as speakers, esteemed ministers and deputy minister have indicated, enabling participation in decision-making, power sharing, and negotiating and collective voice and agency with public or other private entities. Engagement in cooperatives for women can also boost their leadership and management and provide services like housing, finance, and care. I mentioned this one, it's especially important as unpaid care needs, unmet care needs can be a key impediment to women's equal participation in the economy. In addition, we see some positive externalities that are coming out of women's engagement in cooperatives, in addressing personal and communal needs like freedom from discrimination, violence and harassment, especially gender-based violence and harassment. As this year's CSW has an emphasis on climate action, we do see women engaged in cooperatives in climate action realm as well through biological and organic agricultural production, in renewable energy, recycling sectors, and then also their cooperatives have used mitigating measures for climate change, like mutual insurance for crops, drought-resistant crops, improved irrigation and watershed management techniques, etc. In some countries, For instance, in South and West Asia, North and West Africa, women-only cooperatives are active in agricultural production, food processing, crafts, artisanal services. They provide work opportunities for their members and strengthen also solidarity among them. If we look at the sectoral distribution of women around the world in co-ops, in fact, we see them to be founders, members, users, leaders in the social, education, health, and care sectors, the sectors where we see them more engaged in the labor force in general. And as I mentioned, cooperatives are emerging as care service providers, particularly in contexts where other viable public or private sector options don't exist. And we also see workers, care workers, like home care, domestic, social, community health care workers providing diverse care services for elderly, for disability, for child care. When it comes to agriculture, women are often in minority among leaders and the members of the agricultural cooperatives. This is the case even when women are the majority of contributing family workers and agricultural wage workers around the world. And of course, this is often due to land and property not being owned and controlled by women, and with men being often considered the heads of households. In regions like East Asia, we see consumer cooperatives, and often these are founded by women to give better quality food and service for their families. And majority of their members and users are women, but not so much, again, in leadership. To improve women's participation in these cooperatives, we need measures that apply to many organizations and enterprises, like equality guidelines, affirmative action, management, and leadership training to fast-track them to rise to leadership ranks. There's cause for hope, though I don't want to draw such a dark picture, because in sectors like cooperative and mutual insurance, we are seeing an improved representation of women in leadership ranks. So these kind of events and policies and programs that bring women's engagement in cooperatives into visibility and focus are helpful also to help move the cooperative movement in taking action. Many governments are recognizing, as we heard from our three esteemed speakers, recognizing women's engagement in cooperatives as a way to improve their employment and empowerment. In fact, in some countries, women's labor force participation might be lower than their participation in cooperatives. And this is something for countries that want to increase women's labor force participation, a strategy for use. There are important challenges, of course, especially as it relates to women in women-only cooperatives. When they need to really know, women, when these co-ops are established, the women need to, who are founding them and are becoming members, they need to really know what is a cooperative and why are they joining this cooperative. And they also need to know the how. They need to be equipped with the knowledge on how to manage and sustain these cooperatives as autonomous, independent organizations beyond the course of projects, initiatives that are supporting them. To be able to sustain themselves, they really need to hold that knowledge. And the end goal, of course, is for them to function as jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprises, as per the ILO recommendation that I mentioned to you a little bit earlier. Women cooperatives are often in rural and informal economies and among disadvantaged communities. So support services tailored to their needs are critical to their success. And such services need to be sustainable beyond 2-3-year projects. This is what our evidence is showing from efforts. And the role, of course, of national and local governments is critical in supporting such cooperatives at the micro level. Their role in creating conducive environment at the meso and macro levels are even more important. So the meso level is to create an enabling ecosystem of support institutions that are there for the long haul and not just for the project, that they can guide them for the financing and non-financial services, train them in financing, marketing, the services that were mentioned earlier, provide them with legal and tax advice until they can stand on their own and become sustainable. And often, of course, with the co-op principle, members' economic participation is the main self-financing mechanism, of course, until they become viable external financing like subsidies, grants, interest-free loans, in-kind contributions like secondments of staff, building equipment can be given. And often traditional financing mechanisms don't recognize cooperatives as a viable option. So established cooperative financing institutions like co-op banks, saving and credit unions can be instrumental in financing women cooperatives. And so there are also some innovative recent social financing mechanisms. At the macro level, having a policy framework that's conducive to establishment of and growth of cooperatives is a key issue. For instance, putting in place legal provisions for worker cooperatives, social cooperatives, can help establish the policy environment to encourage women's participation. In conclusion, in today's changing world of work, there is a growing request. There's a growing quest for new forms of business. And with a conducive environment at all levels, cooperatives can be major contributors to decent work, sustainable development, and a human-centered recovery. Thank you, and back to you, Ali.
Thank you so much. Simel, you make very convincing arguments, and I think you've come at it also from the point of view of not just looking specifically at women's cooperatives, but how we can empower women through cooperatives and the cooperative movements. My takeaway has been, or takeaway is, to look at the diversity of services, so the kinds of services that can be provided, including critically care services, which tend to be unrecognized, undervalued, and under-resourced, but also looking at the access of women through cooperatives and cooperative movements to resources, to knowledge, to decision-making. So, and also not just access, but control over that so that they can also shape. But really important messages that you have shared with us and very valuable intervention. Well, thank you so much, Simel. Lovely to see you again. We were supposed to have our colleague from the Food and Agriculture Organization join us, but I believe she's having some technical difficulties. So we will move on to the next speaker, and hopefully Asmahan Al-Wafi from FAO will be able to join us a little bit later. So I turn to the next speaker, who is Diana Dovgan, Secretary General of the European Confederation of Industrial and Service Cooperatives. Diana has worked also in the International Organization of Cooperatives in Industry and Services, and has heavily been engaged in her career in policy issues. She's also served as policy advisor to the Belgian Minister on Social Inclusion and Equal Opportunities. We're really interested to hear from your perspective. You have both a government perspective, but also right at the heart of cooperative work. I'm much looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much, Diana, and over to you.
Thank you. Merhaba from Brussels. It's a real honor for me to be with you today, along with distinguished women guests. So I would like to thank the Turkish government for the invitation. I represent CECOP, the European Confederation of Cooperatives acting in industry and services. We have members in 16 European countries, and we represent around 40,000 cooperative enterprises in Europe. But I also serve, as you said, as General Secretary of CECOPA, the global organization. And there, of course, we have a much bigger network, members in 35 countries worldwide. Our organization represents mainly worker cooperatives, which are cooperatives owned and managed by their workers, and social cooperatives. This is also a very important amount of cooperatives in our network. Social cooperatives, as we define them, those providing social services to the community, but also also who are active in work integration of disadvantaged workers. Women empowerment through cooperatives is an essential topic to us. As worker cooperatives, we look at it mainly through the employment perspective. It has been recognized that worker cooperatives provide decent employment, combine work and life balance, provide work to disadvantaged groups, usually excluded from the labor market, and practice democracy at the workplace. But how do they empower women? Firstly, when a woman is a worker member of a cooperative, she's not just empowered because she works in the cooperative and gets an income. The fact that she co-owns the enterprise and is associated to the decision-making and thus co-owns the means of production makes the whole difference. In this way, the women are empowered, gain managerial skills that contribute also to a better autonomy in the society as well. And this can be even more powerful tool in less equal countries where women concerns do lack space and opportunities to be heard and taken into account. Then worker cooperatives empower women in providing quality jobs adapted to their needs. It's a matter of fact, care tasks toward children or elderly members in families are unequally redistributed. As we know, gender equality at work won't be achieved if there is no more equality in care. Also, workplaces need to be adapted to women realities. We have testimonies showing that cooperatives allow better work-life balance and flexibility. Many examples of cooperatives owned and managed by women, and we know that there are many examples in Turkey, we have heard it from the minister, show that well-being and productivity can be combined. They even reinforce each other. When talking about care, I need to mention that we have many social cooperatives providing care to children, elderly, people in need. Ms. Simel Hashim has mentioned it just before. Many of them are located in Italy, by the way, but it's also a trend that it's a growing trend all around the world. We know that women are overrepresented as care workers, and very often they suffer poor working conditions, precarious contracts, undeclared work, etc. Here as well, cooperatives are playing an important role. They provide care service to the community that reduce burden on women and allow them to be more professionally active, but also cooperatives provide more decent work conditions to women. In Europe, for example, 80% of care workers are women, but majority of the structures are managed by men. In Italy and Spain, we know that the percentage of managerial positions held by women in cooperatives providing care is higher than in non-cooperative care providers. For many years now, our members in Europe, but also worldwide, have been committed and active in many ways to promote women employment and entrepreneurship through cooperatives. Adopting specific programs, funds, campaigns, training, etc. We also see over the last years a specific attention to discrimination and violence women could face inside cooperatives as well. I would like to mention that the work of COSETA, the Spanish Confederation of Worker Cooperatives, who had established 10 years ago gender equality plans, who are supposed to guide cooperatives affiliated to the federation how to prevent discrimination and gender-based violence at the workplace. Also, we need to work on data. As said before, we have a lot of evidence, but many countries are missing data, gender-based data, about women working in cooperatives, women as member of cooperatives, women in management positions, and we need to work on it. We, the cooperative organization, but also the national statistical agencies. How can we know where to go if we don't know where we stand? To conclude, I would like to say that women empowerment is a joint responsibility. For us, cooperative representative organization and cooperatives as employers to provide adapted and secure workplaces to women, equal pay conditions, and all the chances for women to reach ownership and managerial position. It's a shared responsibility for governments and institutions to adapt and apply legislation against discriminations, gender pay gap, in favor of work-life balance, more equally shared responsibilities such as parental leave, etc., and to support women entrepreneurship through cooperatives. We, cooperative organizations, we are convinced that the cooperative model per se guarantees gender equality because cooperatives are based on principles of equality and democracy. But we cannot rely only on the model. We need constantly to continue efforts toward more equality. It's a permanent fight. Also, cooperatives cannot achieve it alone. This is why we need to work hand in hand with governments, international institutions, and civil society to achieve this goal. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Diana. I think your intervention followed on so well from Sibel's and really went a little bit deeper into some of these issues. And so I'm not going to repeat because you picked up on so many of the issues that Sibel had highlighted. But I think this issue of there's a huge potential because of the model that the cooperatives are built on and the principles that they're built on, but that there should be effort to make sure that the model delivers by focusing a lot on data as well, so kind of disaggregation of data to make sure that you're able to adjust. If you're going off track, you make sure that you recognize and address discrimination, that you make sure that there is proper representation, and that can only be built if you have that kind of data and evidence, building in the accountability mechanism for the principles. I think that's a key takeaway, really important message. And the other I heard, which others have touched on, but I think you've said it very loud and clear, which is partnerships. That for this model to work, it cannot be working independently. It needs to be developed further in partnership. And I think, as you mentioned at the beginning, it's very encouraging to hear from government partners that the strong commitment and focus. So I think we've got some really fantastic ideas from this conversation. And I'm really happy to announce that our colleague Esmahan Al-Wafi, Chief Scientist at the Food and Agriculture Organization, has been able to join us. So we're able to move to her as a speaker, but thank you very much, Diana, for your intervention. And I just wanted to introduce Esmahan briefly. This position of Chief Scientist is a new position that was created within the structures of FAO, within their core leadership structure. So this just signals how important it is seen. But before joining the Food and Agriculture Organization, Ms. Al-Wafi was working at the cutting edge already of agricultural research, and in particular, and I think this would be interesting, very much in line with the topic of this year's CSW, on resource efficient, climate smart crops and technologies that are best suited to different regions that are affected by salinity, water scarcity and drought. She's also an advocate for rethinking food systems as a whole and is a member of many different scientific groups, including the scientific group for the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit. Ms. Al-Wafi, I'm sorry that you were not able to hear the previous interventions, but I'm sure we are eagerly awaiting yours. So I would like to turn to you, give you the floor for your intervention. Ms. Al-Wafi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alia. And my apologies. It seems that we have not taken in consideration that the hours in the US has changed last week. That's why I was in another meeting, but I'm really glad to join you, Alia, and thank you very much for the invitation and nice introduction. So, Excellencies, distinguished delegate, ladies and gentlemen, it's really my pleasure to provide some remarks at this important side event on empowering women through cooperative. And I would like to commend the Ministry of Family and Social Services and the Permanent Mission of Turkey for drawing the attention of the international community to such an important topic. And let me tell you first that as a Moroccan, I have seen how cooperative, particularly women cooperative, have changed life of so many women, particularly the rural women. We all know that closing the gender gap in agri-food system is essential to eradicating hunger, malnutrition, and poverty. And this is in line with the pledge of leaving no one behind, which is really at the heart of the 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goal. And maybe many of us I'm not talking anymore about the millennium, but the millennium did very well. But we recognize that although we have ticked many boxes, we left so many people behind. And those people behind are mostly people in marginal environment. And most of the time, they are marginalized communities within marginal environments. So it's about a biophysical marginality in terms of ecosystem, but also social marginality in terms of poverty. And that's where I think for me, the 2030 agenda, the most important component of it, beyond all the SDGs, but particularly SDG 1 and 2, is actually the leaving no one behind. That we have to make sure this time we are protecting those that need it the most. Evidence shows that globally, women comprise over 35% of the world rural agriculture workforce, a ratio that rises to nearly 50% for the low-income countries. So women contribution is prominent in all agriculture subsectors. While we have witnessed remarkable progress in advancing gender equality in some areas, significant gaps remain to be addressed. For instance, women are more likely to be food insecure than men in every region of the world. And COVID-19 has increased the gap, with women 10% more likely to face food insecurity than men in 2020. As producers, rural women face even greater constraint than men in accessing essential productive resources and services, technology, market information, and financial assets. They are underrepresented in producer organizations, such as cooperative and local institutions, and tend to have less access to decision-making power in the public, but also in the private spheres. Studies show that out of the 1.3 billion people who live on less than $1.25 per day and who depend on natural resources for employment, some 800 million are women and girls, as opposed to 500 men and boys. So you got 800 million women and girls versus 500 million men and boys in terms of poverty again, and very, very low wage per day. One of the many reasons for this gender gap is the absence of economic opportunities for women. And that's where cooperatives come to play. Cooperatives can play a crucial role in the promotion of rural entrepreneurship and business development by directly supporting productive self-employment and generating additional employment opportunities. Moreover, by acting collectively as a cooperative, women increase their bargaining power and income while reducing their transaction costs. Regardless of the sector they belong to or the type of cooperative, whether agriculture, financial, or social, cooperative can be a powerful vehicle of social inclusion, political and economic empowerment of their members because of the values on which they are based, such as equality, solidarity, social responsibility, and leadership. For instance, cooperatives offer networks of mutual support and solidarity for women to build on their social capital, improve their self-reliance, acquire a greater voice in decision-making, and collectively improve their access to a wide range of resources and services, including productive assets, market, to commercialize their product, credit, and other financial and social services. That is why FAO at field level has been promoting the establishment of women-led cooperatives, as well as the participation of women in farmers' cooperatives and organizations. Within the framework of a Canada-funded project, FAO, in collaboration with the Lebanese Ministry of Agriculture, provided more than 270 women cooperatives, associations, and informal groups with capacity building programs to help women acquire the entrepreneurial skills needed to develop a profitable business. In this regard, FAO launched a project in Turkey that prioritized unemployed women seeking to start small-scale income-generating activities. In Izmir, for example, FAO provided support to Syrian and Turkish women to establish cooperatives for food production. Through this approach, women not only had access to income-generating opportunities, but also explore new innovative business ideas and consequently build self-confidence, social network, and agencies. There is no doubt that cooperative membership has a particular strong positive impact on women decision-making and leadership authority at household and community level. However, participation alone is not sufficient to ensure women's needs and demand are effectively addressed. To date, women's leadership in rural cooperative continue to be limited. There is still much to be done. I have few ideas to share with you on what we need to do to correct the actions. And the first one is proactive measures that are needed to encourage women leadership in mixed cooperative and support the establishment of women-only cooperative according to local need and context. The second one is that we must address structural inequalities, shift gender and social norms, and increase women involvement in the formulation of national frameworks, policies, and programs, as this can help promote women's strong presence and leadership in cooperative and farmer groups. FAO promotes the adoption of gender transformative approaches, both at the global, regional, national, community, and household levels. And third, there is a need to invest in the institutional development of women cooperative by providing them with skills, resources, services, technologies, and innovation, and facilitate business development opportunities and market linkages. FAO has been recommending these actions to its members. We work with many governments to adopt policies and programs that foster women's leadership in rural communities, producer cooperative organization, and beyond for efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food system, so that we get to a better production, a better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life, again, leaving no one behind. In the end, we shall remember that women empowerment is a long process that does not happen overnight. Through collective action and participation in the public life, women have the possibility to build both individual and collective identity, which is an important aspect of women empowerment. Cooperatives offer women a pathway through which they can improve their condition and status and be agent of change for themselves and for other women. Through them, women can lead the efforts alongside men of creating a sustainable tomorrow. And maybe just a last idea to share with you is that whatever we are discussing has to make it into policies, because standing by a woman without putting in place a policy and a framework and a law to protect her and provide her with the resources and with access to resources, whatever those resources are, it stays as a word, stays as emotional support. It doesn't translate into tangible things. Only by putting things in policy and making sure that policy it's really enforced, it's really used, then we can change the reality in the livelihood of those women. Thank you very much for your attention. And I would really like to thank the distinguished speakers for their valuable contribution. And I'm sorry if I missed some, but I'm here to listen to all the coming one, and I'm sure my colleagues will brief me on the ones that I have missed. Thank you very much, and over to you, Alia.
Thank you so much, Esmahan. And you don't know it, but a lot of what you've said has resonated very well with what has come in previously. But I just want to thank you on some key points that you emphasized, this, using that lens of leaving no one behind, being a critical one in terms of when we look at what it is, the work that we're doing, and working on that twin track approach where it's not a single track, it's a multiple track approach, but really looking at those structural challenges, barriers that are preventing us from reaching those aspirations of gender equality, but also those targeted interventions that are in support of women's agency, that it's not one or the other, but it really has to be a combination of these two strategies. So very well taken on board. Thank you so much. And now we can turn to our final speaker, Ms. Nurten Öztürk. Ms. Öztürk is the chair of the Women Entrepreneurs Board of the Union of Chambers and Commodity Exchanges of Turkey, which is also known as TOB. And what a great career path. I cannot hope to do a short bio, but so just a snapshot of the career is on her journey to this present role. Ms. Öztürk has worked as a teacher but she's also established a successful family business, the first local fuel company here in Turkey, Opet. And through this company and through her initiative, she's run many corporate social responsibility initiatives. So I cannot do justice to all the work that you've done, but Ms. Öztürk, we're looking forward to hearing from you, and the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to begin by conveying my best regards to all the ministers, all the esteemed speakers, and dear distinguished guests. I would like to express my gratitude from being with yourselves today. This event, hosted by the Ministry of Family and Social Services, I believe is a very important event in terms of emphasizing the importance of empowering women through cooperatives. As we all know, sustainable development is our main goal as countries globally. And we want to be able to do that by increasing women's participation to the labor force more and more to create an increase for our entire countries. Women's establishment and independence is very important for a healthy and productive growth in an economy, and that is vital in order to ensure sustainable rural development, effective, efficient use of local resources, and empowering women in the rural is very much possible through cooperatives. And when we do that, women in the rural will be able to gain economical independence, which is vital for their sustainability. Women's cooperatives and their empowerment will increase production and increase women's professionalism, and they will in return develop our economies. Women's cooperative is an important tool in that regard, and that will be vital in the fight against poverty globally. For that reason, we need to continue supporting women's cooperatives as we do in our country, but at a global level as well. As the TOBB's Women Entrepreneurs Board, where we have more than 7,000 women around the 81 provinces of Turkey, we continue our activities where we try to find solutions to their challenges, because we know that it is not possible for our country to reach its developmental goals without them. And we organize trainings for them so that we can create a support for their sustainability, for their product development, marketing, pricing, customer relationship management, international market research, export, e-commerce, social media management, and risk management. These are among the many topics we provide trainings in. Women's cooperatives need to be able to develop in terms of branding, producing value-added products, exporting, and developing their capabilities. The online marketing platforms need to be accessible by women's cooperatives. And Çiçek Sepeti and Hepsi Burada are platforms which we cooperate in Turkey to be able to promote and support more women's cooperatives. We have a project in Turkey where we are providing trainings to 1,000 women from 72 women's cooperatives in 10 provinces so that they can strengthen their commercial activities. In addition to that, to be able to strengthen and sustain women's entrepreneurships, we do many other activities throughout the country so that we can also promote these issues at level of decision makers and senior managers. According to the events that we have held and the analysis that we have done, the summary of the results that we see can be summarized as we need to be able to explain the importance of women's cooperatives better, generally speaking. We need to develop regional structures and social structures so that these cooperatives can be created, and they need guidance once they are created, especially to be able to have women cooperatives in added value product sectors is, we believe, of vital importance. We are communicating with multiple parties through various different economical stakeholders so that we can make women's cooperatives more visible, so that we can have young people more active in these structures. And we believe that that is very important. They need to be able to have support in financing mechanisms. Banks should be able to provide credits to them. As we all know, women's cooperatives, women's entrepreneurship has a very important challenge in terms of marketing. Therefore, in our environments and networks, we try to promote their activities and at the same time strengthen their capabilities in terms of their access to markets at various different levels. Distinguished participants, we are at the beginning of a new era. And today we have risks such as climate change, natural disasters, and unfortunate inequalities in terms of especially social areas. And these are the issues that we are faced with in this new era. Women's cooperatives can contribute to our challenges in these regards, and we believe that that could be made possible through their support. Unfortunately, the levels of awareness in terms of circular economies are still quite low, and that in return, unfortunately, increases the problems that we are facing environmentally. Therefore, not just for women's future, but for all of our futures, these activities are of a vital importance today. Women's contribution to the labor force will allow us to achieve our equality targets. And we all know birds don't fly with a single wing. And that's why in our network, in our country, we believe that if women exist, our future exists. Thank you very much for your patience, for listening to me. I'm thankful to all of the organization and to our moderator, to all our participants and speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Öztürk, and for bringing the conversation to the root of where we started this all, where we're looking at putting gender equality at the center of those complex challenges that we're trying to tackle as a whole world in relation to sustainable development, tackling climate change, tackling disaster risk reduction. And I think that there is consensus amongst all the speakers that a focus on women's economic empowerment is a good entry point, and that cooperatives represent a very viable model as has been described, to promote women's economic participation and empowerment, and that this leads to overall social and economic benefit. But to do this effectively, as we've heard from all the esteemed speakers, including yourself, that we need to tackle some of those structural barriers. And there have been some ideas put forward on the kinds of policies that we need to have in place, and we need those policies to be effective. We need to ensure women's access to resources, including financial resources, but also very importantly, knowledge. We need to ensure their access to decision-making, to services, including care services, and also networks. We need to be looking at women as active members of cooperatives more generally and all of the cooperative structures. And we also need to think about those initiatives that are targeting women-specific workers and women's workers cooperatives. So I think this has been a clear kind of understanding from here that there are dual strategies that are needed. And for this work to move forward, whether we're talking about addressing those structural barriers, or we're talking about the support to specific women's cooperatives, that we really need strong partnership. And I think that there is so much buy-in from this group, and there's so much important work that is already being done that we can learn from. And so that's how I think we can make sure that there is no woman or girl that is left behind. I would like to end this event by thanking profusely the Ministry of Family and Social Services of Turkey, and also the Permanent Mission of Turkey to the United Nations for organizing and hosting the event today. And from Istanbul, I wish you all a good evening. İyi akşamlar. Thank you so much.
Goodbye. Goodbye from Brussels.